All right, hello and welcome to the 2021 George Mason Student Government Executive Ticket Debate. Elections and Disputes Commissioner Chair Dominic Pino. The Elections and Disputes Commission is the branch of student government in charge of running clean and fair elections, and we are running this debate. We received dozens of questions from students and selected only a handful of the best questions to ask the candidates tonight. We are honored to have with us Professor Stephen Pearlstein to moderate tonight's debate. Professor Pearlstein is a Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the Washington Post and the Robinson Professor for Public Affairs at George Mason. He teaches courses for the Honors College and helps run the Politics, Philosophy, and Economics program for the university. Thank you so much for being here and helping us out tonight, Professor Pearlstein.
My pleasure.
Here's how this event will run. We will begin with a coin flip to decide the order of responses for the rest of the debate. Once that is settled, we will begin the first half of the debate, which will feature the vice presidential candidates from each ticket. Each candidate will give a 2-minute opening statement. Then students will ask questions directly to the candidates, followed by Professor Pearlstein asking his own questions. Candidates will receive 1.5 minutes each to respond to each question. The order they respond will alternate for each question. When the questions are complete, there will be a 5-minute halftime break. After the break is finished, the presidential candidates will face questions just like the vice presidential candidates did, first from students, second from Professor Pearlstein. The same 1.5-minute time limit for responses will apply. Then each presidential candidate will give a 2-minute closing statement. Whichever ticket went second for opening statements will get the last word. I will keep time. Time warnings will be given visually by displaying cards for the camera. I'll give warnings for 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and time is up. Candidates have agreed to the following rules. There should be no interruptions of opponents' answers. The Zoom chat function will be disabled for participants, and time limits will be strictly enforced. Now, introducing the candidates. We have one ticket of Ransom Fox for president, CJ Davis for vice president. And we have another ticket, Natalia Kanos for president, and Veronica for vice president. And with that, we will go to the coin flip. Based on our previous agreement, Fox and Davis are heads, Kanos and Mata are tails. I will share a coin flip screen because the internet is wonderful. All right, we ready for the coin flip? It's tails. That is Kanos and Mata, and so you guys get to decide. Would you like to have the first word or the last word?
We'll take the last word, please.
Last word, okay. So that means that Kanos and Mata will be ticket 2 for the purpose of our, so we will begin with Vice President 1 giving the opening statement for the Vice President half of the debate.
Can I go ahead? Oh. Okay. Good evening. Ransom Fox and I, CJ Davis, come before you today as stewards to the people, senators elected by the people in order to advocate for the people. If you look at some of the major student government initiatives from the last 2 years we have been serving, we have been involved with it in one way or another. The Patriot Protection Program, building 147 lights across campus, was conceived and led by Ransom Fox. As the only person who publicly stood up to student government leadership to resign in the name of sexual assault survivors, despite being a freshman, was I, CJ Davis. Speaking at the Sodexo Workers Rally, a speech in Spanish for all the workers to understand was Ransom Fox. turning Patriots in Action, originally a week-long campaign for survivors of assault, into a month-long campaign with activities to teach boundaries and consent to students, as well as a safe place for survivors, was I, CJ Davis. Currently, we are working with GMU PD to increase transparency and more trust in their department by working on anti-bias training. Safety, transparency, and education are our biggest issues we will tackle. Service, accountability, and passion are our strongest values. Ransom, Fox, and I have not only been serving the students, but the faculty and staff that feed us, clean after us, and teach us since the beginning of our college careers. This is what makes us stewards of the people, and together we will create one Mason nation. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. Natalia, Kanos, and I are dedicated to serving the Mason community. And if we are elected as your next president and vice president, our platform includes initiatives to enhance university life, expand academic opportunities, continuously fight for a more inclusive campus, and create a relationship between student government and Mason students. But the main reason that you should vote for Natalia and I is because we have been putting in the work for the past 3 years to make a change at Mason's campus. We both joined student government our freshman year, and we have worked in almost every committee, including diversity and multicultural affairs, admin and finance, university life, and government and community relations. We have both been in student government leadership, and we have been senators who have gone through the processes. This experience, combined with our other involvement on campus, is the reason that Natalia and I are the best people for the job. Natalia and I have created a comprehensive platform that brings together initiatives we have both seen need to happen. We're also dedicated to creating a diverse cabinet that will be as dedicated and as passionate as we are to implement these changes and work in service to the students. We are committed to bridging the gap between students and student government and uniting everyone with the relationships we have already been able to create over the past 3 years and with our extensive involvement on campus. We are ready for the job, and we are and have been passionate about making our platform happen. Natalia and I are an amazing team, and I know that if we are elected, we will work in service with the students to make great things happen. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, CJ and Veronica. We'll go to the first questioner, who's Jean Tenson. Jean, turn on your microphone and your camera if you have it.
Working on it. Good evening. My question is, as a part-time non-traditional student, student government is completely invisible to me. I had no idea there was even an election. What do you do exactly, and why should I care about student government?
We'll start with Veronica. 1 minute and a half.
Thank you. That is actually a great question. So I think one of the biggest battles that I've seen happen in student government in my past 3 years has been the lack of student involvement, and especially the lack of student involvement from contemporary student services. Last year, off-campus student services was converted to contemporary student services. And me and Natalia are going to work to make that position in student government a more comprehensive position. Asking why you should care is a great question, but here's the thing. Student government is doing something for all the students, whether that be advocacy for the Rave Guardian app, whether that be shuttle service, which is very important to off-campus students and is something that is in Natalia and I's platform, whether that be creating a shuttle on-demand service and making sure that all students know that, including contemporary students, and things like the Patriot Period program. Our services platform is very extensive, and that works for all the students. Thank you.
CJ. CJ, you there?
Sorry, it wouldn't let me unmute, but I'm here. Thank you for asking that question. I was actually an off-campus student myself, and I didn't know how to get involved with anything because there wasn't much communications. So Ransom and I have met with the Contemporary Student Board. Despite them not being able to endorse us, we still met with them so we could share our ideas about getting contemporary students more involved, which is off-campus students. And we worked with initiatives to help veterans on campus that are typically off-campus students, as well as we want to create a newsletter for off-campus students that reaches out to them and allows for them to be involved in events on campus. Student government does a lot of initiatives that affect academics, like we did the Pass Fail initiative this year, which helped students of all types to choose whether they could pass fail in the coronavirus. So basically, student government is an advocate for you and what you need to be done. And Ransom and I have an open door policy of 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to contact us and our platform to be able to be a voice for the people and be an advocate and see what they would like.
Okay, thank you. Well, next question from Raffaella Lucioni. Please unmute your mic and turn on your camera.
Yes, hello. So I'm sorry I can't turn on my camera right now, but my question is, COVID-19 significantly changed the students, the staffs, and our workers' sense of security. A high rate of students also suffer from food insecurity and gender-based violence, both of which also deteriorate the students' notion of security. So what are your plans to ensuring that students are safe on campus during and after COVID-19?
First will be CJ.
Thank you for your question. Ransom and I have been working with our Vice Chair, Sophia Nguyen, this past semester about working on a community fridge for the community. And even though admin wasn't on board now and some of our other student government members weren't on board, we're still going to push to be able to get a community fridge and work with Patriot Pantry to fight food insecurity for different members of student government, or with members of student government, my bad, for the students, because food insecurity is a huge issue. Gender-based violence is also a huge issue during COVID, and we want to combat that with prevention education. We're doing Patriots in Action. I'm leading that as chair of University Life this semester for prevention efforts on how to have boundaries and teach consent to students, as well as provide resources for survivors in those spaces. Thank you.
Veronica.
Thank you. Safety for students is so comprehensive. And so let me first battle the first part of your question, which was COVID-19. Battling COVID-19 and helping students stay safe during COVID-19 has many different bases to it. One of the things in Natalia and I's platform is creating COVID kits for students that live on campus. So basically this would be a kit that would provide masks, hand sanitizer, sanitizing wipes for students so that they can feel safer during the pandemic. And we also want to create transportation to isolation centers. Currently, if a student is diagnosed with COVID-19 and they live on campus and they have to go isolate in the Mason Global Center, they have to walk there by themselves. There's no transportation to provide them there, which is so unsafe. And a person who's already suffering and is sick shouldn't have to walk all the way across campus to isolate. So one of our main initiatives is to create transportations to those isolation centers. Now, speaking in terms of safety in general, I personally had an initiative last year that was to promote Brave Guardian. Brave Guardian is an app that connects you directly with Mason Police where you can tell them when you feel unsafe. And also, Natalia and I want to work to have stronger policies related to COVID-19. So these stronger policies, although may limit people's interactions with each other, are in terms to help fight the pandemic and help us all move past this pandemic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Alexander Ramirez. Alexander?
Perfect, thank you. So my question for the candidates is, I see many promises and goals on both platforms, but for a few in particular, can you detail the specific steps necessary to follow through on these goals within student government and in the Fairfax community? So specifically something that you both shared on your platforms, lobby to remove the 4-person housing limit with the Fairfax County ordinance in their code. But then for Fox Davis, combat food insecurity, Kanos Mata, advocate to uncapped credits from 15 back to 18. So for these, what is the process within student government so you can make these goals a reality?
Veronica, why don't you start off?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. And I think that's such an important question because our platforms can say anything they want, but at the end of the day, you want to put people in place who are actually going to follow them through. So with that, one of my main initiatives and one thing that I'm really looking forward to working on is uncapping the 4-person housing limit in Fairfax County and increasing that to 5 people to decrease financial hardship. One of the reasons that I think this is possible for Natalia and I is because we've been able to make connections with people in Fairfax County. And with those connections that we've made, we can advocate for that. As student government members and having the Government and Community Relations Committee, that allows us to create those bridges and create those gaps and advocate for the students. So being a person who represents the students, we can then go to Fairfax County as a student government group and advocate for this. And now uncapping the tuition cap. That is so important to us and is especially important to people who are double majors or majors in STEM. And one of the ways that we plan on doing that is, once again, with the relationships we have been able to create with administration, such as the Dean of Students. By doing that, you can, by the relationships that we've been able to create with the Dean of Students, we can then talk to them and explain to them how this is a financial hardship to students. Once again, student government is working as an advocacy group, and through that advocacy, we can push forward these propositions to administration. Thank you.
And now CJ.
Hi, so great question. Like Veronica said, platforms are very important, but what you actually do about it is even better. So the 4-person cap is something that Ransom has been talking about for a while. He met with the board of those that do services construction around Mason. So we're able to talk about that. He also has connections in Fairfax County government already. He was an intern with the Fairfax County government in Fairfax City. So he has lots of connections with the mayor already. And as being chair of Government and Relations Committee, he's already built a lot of community events. And so he's going to advocate with his connections for the 4-person cap together with us. And then the next thing you were talking about was food insecurity. So we were thinking about working with the 29 Diner in the community about putting together a community fridge. So we want to work with different restaurants and different grocery stores in the area to provide food for these things to ensure that students' needs are met, but also the community's needs are met, because students have families and that live in the area. So thank you.
Okay, the next question is from Alex Mahodajian. Alex.
I'm not seeing him in the meeting. You should.
All right, well, I'll ask the question for Alex. What specific actions will you take to reduce tuition, activity fees, housing, or any other major costs to students? CJ.
Student government set up the student housing board this past year. And one of the things we'd like to do is work with the student housing board to decrease housing cost, as well as lobby to admin about keeping the tuition rates down, because they're not raising tuition in this upcoming year. But we do want to make sure that for upcoming years, they're not raising tuition. So we will keep lobbying and advocating with the academics committee and academics undersecretaries to make sure that tuition can stay capped and hopefully even lowered. But it has gone up during COVID and it's affected many students, and we don't want it to keep affecting students in that negatively. So we will work with the academics committee and also work with the student housing board to make sure that housing costs can be decreased. Thank you.
And Veronica.
Thank you so much. And that's really a great question. So one of the most important things I've learned in my time in student government is that tuitions and fees usually come from the Board of Visitors. As student body president, you get a seat at the Board of Visitors. So obviously we all want to advocate and lobby for less tuition, for lower activities fees, and for less housing costs. But the way that we're specifically going to do that is with our position on the Board of Visitors, we are going to lobby and tell them that raising tuition is unfair and that we are creating horrible financial hardships for all our students. And one of the ways that we're going to hear students' voices in this is by having a student committee to see where the activity fees go. Once I saw a chart of where our activities fees go, and it was like 50% to student athletics. 50% of our students aren't spending all their money on athletics. So that is the reason we want to create this committee so that we can hear the students' voices and really take into account where should our activities fees be going and where should they be proportionally spread. With that committee would hopefully come up with a report, and we can once again go advocate to the Board of Visitors and to school administration and tell them that this is what the students want to see, so let's make it happen. Thank you.
Veronica, I wonder if I could ask you a follow-up question. So you're arguing before the Board of Visitors, and you say, don't raise the fees, don't raise the tuition. What would you, obviously the Board of Visitors does not control how much money the state legislature gives to Mason, so that's a given. So they have to, if you want them to cut tuition or to spend less, in order to charge less, they have to spend less. So what would you have them spend less on?
That is a really great question. And like I said, we would create this committee to evaluate activities fees to see where we could reduce costs. But if it was up to me and what I know, one of the places that we might be able to reduce costs would be, like I said, academics. But once again, this is a decision for the committee to make and for the students to make. There also needs to be more transparency in the Board of Visitors, because this is a group of people who usually meet closed door and make all these decisions. And really the only student there is the student body vice president. So.
Okay. And the same question for Veronica. I mean, we're in CJ, I guess.
If I had to reduce costs in any place on George Mason's campus, I would probably reduce the cost in the police force. Because of tensions, I think that increasing funding for mental health resources and different offices on campus that directly help the students would be much better used than going into the police, because there's no transparency with how much money is going into the police, and there's not much of a production that we are getting from it. So we definitely need to reevaluate the transparency of the funds that are going to different places on campus. And I believe that I would definitely lobby with the state to increase funding for these student programs like CAPS for mental health for students and faculty. Thank you.
Okay, so now I get to ask a couple of questions, it says here. So first, I'd like to ask a question about faculty evaluations, which you all are supposed to fill out for every course at the end of every semester. You may have noticed, or you will notice, that as a result of changes asked for by the faculty, although the faculty give you a final grade, you are no longer asked to give the faculty a final grade on these evaluations. The faculty also complained enough so that your evaluations are given very little, if any, weight in deciding promotions and tenure. And for the first time this year, your evaluations of faculty are not public. They are only to be seen by other faculty members. I'm wondering what you think about this process of evaluating the faculty, and what role the student government might have if these are not used in identifying faculty who do a great job, but also identifying faculty who don't do a great job. Let's start with Veronica.
That's a really great question, and I really appreciate you bringing that to my attention, because I hadn't known that about the changes that were coming to the course feedback forms. One of the things that I've always believed, and it hasn't ever been one of my main initiatives in student government, but as a regular student, I've always believed that the feedback and course feedback forms at the end of the year weren't always very helpful, in my opinion. People just kind of put down whatever they wanted, and then I never really knew that there was anything you could do with them. I didn't know that that was the way that pay grades were decided and weren't decided. So in student government, in the student senate, we have a faculty senate liaison. I would use that position to create more transparency with the faculty senate and why the faculty senate might have made those decisions. Who were the people in charge of those decisions? Are they the bad faculty members who want to hide their evaluations? Who knows? I don't know. But creating transparency in that process, I think, is really important. And then also creating transparency in the grading process and how that process might translate into hiring and firings of teachers. And also bringing that in and looking at it from a diversity perspective and making sure that we are creating and keeping a diverse and inclusive faculty. Thank you.
CJ.
Thank you. I believe that we should advocate to reverse the decision in order for our students' feedback to make a difference and a weight again, because there's been a lot of complaints about different faculty members through racism, sexism, and religious discrimination in the classroom. And if you go on public forums online, you can see that teachers have a reputation and they aren't reprimanded. There's nothing done about it. And I believe that we need to start taking it seriously. And if we're going to make a change at this school, we need to listen to the students' complaints about these allegations of racism, sexism, religious discrimination, and more, because these are the people that are supposed to be mentoring us and guiding us and giving us a quality education. And if we don't feel safe and comfortable in our own environment, then where else are we supposed to go? Thank you.
I wonder, CJ, if I can follow up and ask you, is the biggest problem with evaluating teachers that some are racist, sexist, or against certain religion, or is a bigger problem that they're just not very good teachers?
It can be a mix of both. I mean, some are, they have their biases and there are racist and sexist. I mean, I'm not saying all faculty are, but definitely there are some that do have discrimination against students. And then there also are teachers that just don't understand methods to teach in this day and age. And we want to create a faculty position in order to work with the faculty more and work with the faculty senate more. We have our faculty liaison position, but we definitely want to make sure that faculty have advocacy as well, more advocacy in student government than they already do through the senate position.
Okay. One last question from me. As you know, the university is now engaged in a rather sweeping anti-racism effort. From the student's viewpoint, or from your ticket's viewpoint, where do you think the greatest focus should be? On faculty hiring, on curriculum, or on student life? Let's start with CJ.
I believe that student life is the key to this thing, but my second close up there tied is the faculty diversity, because student life is already so diverse, but we don't have the inclusiveness that there needs to be in RSOs and different things, because students don't know how to get involved and they are not educated on topics about racism and different biases. So targeting student life and educating them more about different cultures and creating cultural competency is very important. And then second, faculty diversity is tied with that, because we need faculty diversity in order to create the culture of cultural competency. Like the CAPS department needs more diversity within its thing. CAPS is counseling and psychological services. A lot of students feel as if they don't have a voice or they can't go and share their mental health problems because the staff isn't diverse enough. So both are very important, and I would say that there's a tie. Thank you.
And Veronica.
Thank you. So actually, my running mate, Natalia Kanos, sits on the task force. And personally, we believe that hiring and curriculum are the most important. Hiring especially because hiring affects curriculum. The professors you hire, they're going to create diverse curriculum, hopefully, and then that's going to educate the student life. Obviously, student life is so important, but what is a way to diversify and educate our students? Make them take social justice classes and put professors in those positions who are qualified and diverse to teach those classes and teach a diverse curriculum. So I think the whole process starts with hiring, and then you go and you transform the curriculum and you start to transform the student life. Also, training of professors is so important. Like you had mentioned earlier, I think there's just not a good way for students to report that a professor might be sexist or racist or be doing these certain types of things. So hiring professors and then educating them and training them so that they are aware of their biases and they're aware of their microaggressions is so important. Thank you.
Well, can't you just send a note or visit the dean of the school and make a complaint?
I think that's a little intimidating for a lot of students, which is why a lot of teachers' weaknesses come out in this course evaluation at the end of the semester, where everything is private and everything is under wraps, basically, because how me as a person of color am I going to go to a dean of students and say, oh, my professor is a racist? Oh,
No.
great.
Why not? Why
Cool.
not?
I think it can be really intimidating, especially because a lot of administration are white people. And so can be a very intense kind of place for you to be as a person of color, to kind of go and express these complaints and express kind of sometimes these traumatizing things that might happen to you. And advocating for yourself as a person of color isn't always the easiest thing to do.
Okay. So we'll have a little break now and 5 minutes, and then we'll start with the questions of the presidential candidates.
All right, everybody, that was 5-minute halftime. So just want to review the format for the second half, just so that everybody's on the same page. We will be going right into the presidential candidates. They will not be giving opening statements. The vice presidential tickets took care of that. They will only be giving closing statements at the end. So we will begin with student questions and then proceed with Professor Pearlstein's questions. Same time limits as before, 1.5 minutes for responses to questions, and then 2 minutes for the closing statements.
Okay. First question for the presidential candidates from Laura Scudder.
Hello, thank you. So what is your #1 priority that you plan on tackling during your term, and what actionable steps do you plan on taking to accomplish this?
Oh, I'm sorry. First, we'll first hear from Natalia.
Okay, yes, thank you so much for the question. I think the first thing we really want to do is start off by forming our cabinet, and we want to reach across to different RSOs, to fraternity and sorority life, to really get a cabinet of members of the student population, make it as diverse as possible, and make it really represent Mason's population so that we can have people tackle different aspects of our platform. We have an amazing platform from academics to diversity, and it really needs it's a platform that needs to have relationship with RSOs, relationships with student government, to bridge that gap and really have that unified student voice to take to administration. So the first step is just really making a cabinet that represents Mason's community and making sure that each person has the abilities and the support that they need to make sure that these things happen. Continue to push forth. Sometimes is tasking, dealing with administration when you hear no, but take that no and revise your plan and come back again to make sure that these changes are actually made. And yes, that's it.
And Ransom.
Thank you for that question. I believe the question is, what is the most important thing and the one thing you want to get done when you're in office? So I've been going around talking, CJ and I, to a lot of different students and a lot of boards who usually aren't talked to from student government because maybe they're not allowed to endorse, or maybe just in the past student government hasn't cared about them. And what they're noticing is that student government, in their opinion, they don't even know what goes on. They don't really know what we do for them and what we can do for them. That's why for the last 4 months now, we've been going out and we've been discussing with people from all different types of boards and organizations to hear what they want to be done, because we feel like that's the only way to make change at Mason. Our whole theme is coming together as one Mason nation, and that is only done by reaching out to people instead of having them come to us. We actually plan on doing this by completely overhauling our outreach in student government. For starters, we want to make sure that the executive department does outreach as well as the Senate, and we want to do outreach like this. For example, if you, a member of student government, are in a club or an RSO, you will be the liaison between student government and your RSO by going to the meetings, talking to them what they want to see from student government, and reporting it back to us. We also are creating a new outreach position that where every other RSO that is not taken care of, they will go to those meetings, or they will organize with the rest of PR department and executive who will go to their meetings to talk to them. Because right now, student government, they only work for themselves and work for people that they have connections with, and we're going to go to you and to go to everybody. And that's our goal, is to go to everybody, go to you, know what we do, and come together as one Mason nation.
Okay, next question from Corwin Matthews.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was like, ooh, trying to figure this out. Sorry. So my question is, if you are selected as student body president, what would be your plan to help making sure that we have a safe and effective return to campus? It's mostly in-person classes. And what proper channels or connections would you utilize in order to try to accomplish this?
First, we'll have a response from Ransom.
Absolutely. So thank you for that question. As you know, after talking with Rose Pasquarello and President Washington, we're looking to open up about 75% capacity next year. That's the goal. But we want to make sure that we continue our great score of how we're doing with COVID right now. We want to make sure we open up, but we have to open up safely. And I think working with the administration, just continuing to have that dialogue is key in doing that, right? Because at the end of the day, student government has our budget, our connections, and our voice. One key aspect is our connections. Meeting with the local health department in Fairfax, meeting with the decision makers, either the Board of Visitors and President Washington at Mason, and to see what they think is the best idea. That's how we're going to do that. We want to definitely start opening up more, because at the same time, there's been a mental health crisis that has occurred from being just stuck inside for this whole time. But at the same time, we have to open up efficiently and safely. And honestly, Dr. Washington has done a great job of doing that. And we would love to just continue to talk to him, continue to have that conversation, actually have that conversation more and talk to him more and be able to see what he wants to do and just continue to do that, because we feel like he's doing it the right way, and just following it and how he's doing it and having the dialogue with him will be the best way, because the report shows, compared to other schools in Virginia, we're doing a lot better. Just keeping it the same, keeping it the plan they already have. That's our goal, sticking with it, but having more communication with them just in case we need to update it. That's key, but they're doing a great job and we're going to keep that up.
Ransom, I wonder if I could ask a follow-up question. They promised, or they're hoping to get to 75% in-person capacity. But the reality is that there may be a number of faculty who basically don't want to come back, and they may be allowed to by their deans. If you get to the fall and you find out that in fact it's not 75% capacity, it's only 50% capacity because of the desires or the convenience of the faculty, how would you deal with that? Would students find that acceptable? And or would you find it acceptable? And if you don't, what would you do about that?
So for the classes, I absolutely understand that teachers, if they're of older age or they have underlying conditions, they're more at risk. And whatever the school wants to do, we feel like they have the best. No, we're not doctors. None of us running here are doctors. The school has the access to those people and to those resources. We would definitely be okay with what the school pushes, because they're doing it right so far. You can look at the record. In terms of how the students would feel about that, I definitely understand that people might be upset about that because they want to open up more. That's why we want to have and push for more in-person events for students, because I understand faculty and teachers, some of them aren't, even our workers are not getting the correct PPE to work. But I know for teachers, back to teachers, some of them may not want to come back, and that's okay. We respect that. We understand that. We agree with that. For the students, we built lights with 10 people, and we can host more events with 10 people, small groups. We use Mason 360 to create events. We can promote it. We can sign up, do the COVID health check. You sign up through Mason 360, and then that's where we'll be able to hold events. It might be 10 people, it might be more depending on whoever the new governor or what Governor Northam decides to do, but that's how we combat it. We keep the wishes of the teachers well by letting them do what they want to do. And for students who want to open up more, we have more in-person events for students, just with students outside of class. More small groups, safe events, using the systems we already have that are great, because that's how we're going to be able to tackle both the mental health issues in terms of staying inside all day, and tackle if teachers don't want to come back, that's great. That's their decision. We respect that and we agree with it and we work with them. That's a great compromise in our opinion.
Natalia, how would you address this question about a safe and effective return to campus?
Yes, when talking about effectiveness, I think the first step would be making sure that there's a class available, at least in every single college. This helps protect our international students who might need to take in-person classes to save their F1 status. Then having with housing's already started planning a safe return to campus. And I think it's really important to have students in on that conversation, as we've had to kind of deal with the policies. And now it's time to kind of have our input of what worked and what we thought didn't work. It's also important to have a system for vaccination for students when they're returning, starting off with student staff who are doing the job on campus. It's important to make sure that there's a vaccine plan for students who want to have that option. And also with talking with policies, it's really important for Mason to have a detailed policy on the COVID-19 pandemic. starting off the semester, what was the mask policy? A lot of people were still confused. What was the policy about visiting friends in different neighborhoods? That changed halfway through the semester. It's important for the policy to be straight so students know what to do. And it's also important to make sure that there's cleaning in classrooms and making sure there's policies on how to report the spread of COVID effectively on campus if needed. Also talked about having and making sure that there's shuttle services available to take students who need to go to isolation in case the numbers are going up. And I think those are important things that need to be addressed.
And Natalia, I'll ask you the same question. What if it turns out that after you've paid your tuition and you all return to campus, it turns out that not 75% of the courses, but half or less are in person? How would you feel about that, and what would you do about that?
Personally, I would be disappointed about that, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of students do understand that we are in a pandemic, and it's Mason's interest is to keep as many students safe as possible. So if CDC guidelines and everything, taking the whole picture into account, that's what the best Mason can do. It's something that we might just have to adjust to and pivot to and see how we can still have that Mason experience, whether it's having more virtual events, making sure that sporting events are live streamed on GMU TV so that students can participate and still feel a part of the community. Just pivoting and making sure that students can still find their place on campus, even though there is not that physical 75% capacity. And I think that's something that needs to be done.
Okay. Next question is from Marina Lee.
Hi, so my question is, how do you plan on improving the accountability issue within the executive cabinet? So for example, making sure all members are staying in touch with their lead team and also their respective secretaries, as well as showing up to cabinet and departmental meetings consistently. Thank you.
First question will go first to Natalia.
Yes, one way I see doing this is kind of implementing what the Senate has at the moment, which would be a strike system, just to hold each member accountable for their making sure they go to committees, making sure they go to the events, making sure that they're meeting with the people in administration they need to make sure their initiatives are done. I also plan to continue to have cabinet meetings every week instead of bi-weekly or once a month. I feel like this is easier to keep track of things and make sure that everybody is going along the path that is needed. I also plan to have check-ins with my chief of staff and the vice president with members of cabinet to just make sure that they're doing all right and make sure that if they need any help or support, we're able to pivot and help them in that sense. And yeah, it's a lot of people. Cabinet is made up of a lot of people, but I feel like if we have those systems in place, have forms on how to report things, and if stuff isn't working or stuff is working, having that clear communication line so that we can communicate on things and just make sure that we're running as effective as possible. I also really hope to make a cabinet of people who are really dedicated and want to implement change. And I feel like if we get the right people in the right positions, they'll be willing to put it their all in all to make sure that things happen, and that would work out effectively for us.
Ransom, same question, improving accountability within the executive cabinet.
Thank you, Marina, for the question. Pretty simple answer: implement a strike system in executive. That's on our platform, because no disrespect to people that are in cabinet, but if there's no strike system, right, it'll be less likely to hold people accountable. So by having a strike system, we'll be able to hold people accountable for their actions in cabinet. Number two, we want to continue the great work that President Adams and Vice President O'Connell are doing this year with having meetings with members in cabinet, just checking up on them, seeing how they're doing. We really want to create an atmosphere in cabinet where people are comfortable with each other. They're comfortable with disagreement. They're comfortable with coming to each other, because we feel like student government in the past, there's been a lot of tensions and pettiness where people are just afraid to speak out or afraid to disagree because of what's going to happen to them. And we want to have a family-like atmosphere within our cabinet where people will be comfortable spreading their ideas and comfortable disagreeing. That said, we're also going to make sure that people don't slack off, and we're going to do that by having a strike system. We also know that cabinet, as it currently states, is a little inefficient, so we're going going to combine some positions. You can check that on our platform. And we're going to also add some positions where they're needed to make sure that we're using our energy in the most efficient and effective way. In terms of cabinet meetings, I would actually prefer to talk to all members of cabinet to see what they're most comfortable with. Because I know right now we're currently dealing with the mental health crisis and a lot of other stresses and issues. And I want to make sure that in terms of whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, that everybody is on board with it, get a consensus and go from there. Same thing with department meetings. I trust our department leaders. It's up to them. We want to see what the general consensus is. It's not about me and CJ, it's about our whole team. And speaking of our team, we have a lot of great members that we've had lined up for a very long time now, differing from all different ideologies. I mean, we have someone from the NAACP that's going to be on our team. We have somebody that's in the Mason Cadets that wants to be in our team. And we want to make sure that
that's time, Ransom.
I couldn't see you. I'm so sorry. You're on my thing up ahead. But
right.
Yeah, we just want to make sure that we have everybody on board, and that's what we're going to do.
Okay. Next question from Yoken Shen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my question for the candidate is that what action will you take to make this to restructure the student government in the future to make it more functional and to make the student body more willing to engage? Thank you.
So first, we'll start with Ransom.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, Senator Shen. So we want to rhetorically come together as a family and be able to help out. That's how we're going to culturally bring us together, and that's how we're going to have more of the abstract. In terms of actually the structure of student government, for Senate, we like how it is. We want to keep it the same. In terms of exec, I can go through the positions right now that we're going to combine and add to be more efficient if you'd like that. Number one, we want to add an undersecretary to admin and finance, because right now there's no undersecretary, and we feel like that's a lot of pressure for them to work on their own to help run our budget and set our budget up. So adding an assistant to them would be a great job to put the workload off of them and to be more efficient and to have differing opinions and to expand on our economic prosperity. Number two, we want to add an undersecretary of labor. Helping out the workers is something that CJ and I have been proud doing for the last 2 years. You know, I spoke at the Workers Rally 2 years ago. I was part of the 32 BJ SCIU core team. I was at the Undocumented Mason rally. We can keep going on and on, but we feel like our fight for workers' rights is something that for a long time that has not been helped out with. And we want to stay ahead of the curve with that by creating an undersecretary of labor. We want to combine the undersecretary for student involvement in Mason athletics. We want to combine the undersecretary for student governmental affairs and student civic engagement. We want to add a new undersecretary for faculty to make sure that they're okay and that we come together and have representation with them. And we want to combine the undersecretary for advertising, outreach, and media relations with the undersecretary of outreach and media relations. So yeah, we pretty much have a lot of stuff combining and adding. Check out our platform if you want to see all the details on that.
And Natalia.
Yes, personally, I don't feel comfortable in adding more positions to the executive cabinet. I feel like it's better to move forth with combining certain positions and making sure that we have that tight executive cabinet, that people are able to effectively do their jobs. Veronica actually is in charge of the restructuring ad hoc committee in the Student Senate right now. So they're working on ways to make student government more effective and making sure that we bridge gaps and actually reach out to the student body. And I hope to continue to take the information that they're gaining during that committee to help implement and restructure things needed. I also think it's really important. We're going to have a very rigorous process when it comes to applications for cabinet. As I mentioned, reaching out to RSOs, reaching out to members in athletics, reaching out to Mason fraternity and sorority life, reaching out to the international community, reaching out and really making sure that these people know that, hey, cabinet is open for you. We have a seat for you. We want to make it as inclusive as possible and really represent Mason's community. And I feel like if we do this and if we work to make sure we have dedicated people who want to do the job, who believe in our vision, who believe in making change at Mason, I don't think the executive cabinet will really have that much of a problem. If you get effective people who are committed and willing to work, I believe the structure is really working well if we have the committed people right now. So that's it.
Okay, next questioner is Mia Montanez.
Thank you. As our campus continues to transition into a new era with new leadership and a new normal impacted by COVID-19, how will you work to be a liaison between President Washington and the student body?
I'm sorry, the first question, this will go first to Natalia.
Yes. So the student body president and vice president actually has meetings with the vice president of University Life, Rose Pasquarel, and President Washington. So just really making sure that communication is there, setting up those meetings, making sure that it's attended. And I really want to make it beyond just the vice president and president meetings. I really want to reach out to RSOs. And we plan on having like an RSO listserv where we can hear feedback from various RSOs and members of the Mason community, and just looking over that list and seeing, okay, who can we invite to our conversation this week? What are pressing matters that need to be addressed, and inviting them. I'm a firm believer that the best advocates are the people kind of on the ground doing it. So I really want to invite them and have them share their ideas, have their platforms when we have our meetings with Rose Pasquarel and President Washington. I feel like that's a really way to bring people into the conversation and have that advocacy, as well as making those conversations transparent, just beyond student government, having things on social media talking about issues we're addressing this month, issues that are evolving, giving them updates on what's going on in leadership and what's going on in Mason administration. And I think that by implementing all those platforms would really bring the transparency and bridge the gaps.
And Ransom.
Thank you for the question. As stated earlier, our platform is going to have an outreach position, and everybody in exec is going to go to their orgs. We have a Google feedback form that every time there's a meeting they can fill out. And when we go and before we meet with President Washington and Vice President Pasquarel, we'll bring it up with the RSOs and the student orgs and ask them, okay, we're going to meet with them. Do you want to come with us? But I think the key is about how we're going to get it out to the students, right? Because student government has a country club reputation, that what I've heard when I've talked to clubs that don't endorse and usually don't get reached out to because they don't really know what's going on. We really want to increase our transparency so that and everyone else knows what we talk about, not just with President Washington, but with other people as well. For number one, we want to have a weekly or bi-weekly press conference with student media, all student media at George Mason University, and individual students who like journalism and want to report on what we're doing. That would be the best way to have direct conversation with the students about what we're doing, who we're meeting with, what they say, so that we get the word out and we're more transparent with what happens with meetings with President Washington or anyone else. Number two, we want to have a newsletter for all of our students, get them to sign up, push it out. Number three, social media is our biggest tool. We really want to push it out there on our current social media and also try to expand onto other forms of social media as well, because people don't just use Instagram, they use other types as well. But we really feel like having press conferences will be the best way to push it out there more, and including more people in the meetings while we already go out to them, including them in the meetings with President Washington. We'll be able to have their voice heard, but pushing it out is a big issue for us, and that's what we're going to do through all the means I just said.
Okay, so final question is from me. There are some departments on campus where the large undergraduate courses are usually taught by graduate teaching assistants or adjuncts, not by the senior members of the faculty who, as a general rule, prefer to teach graduate students. I wonder whether you think this is, how much you think of it as a problem, and if you do think it's a problem, what you might do about it. We'll start with Natalia.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I got that wrong. I'll start with, Natalia.
Okay. I personally don't see it a problem with graduate students teaching undergraduates. One of the best professors I had was actually a grad student. I feel like if they're qualified individuals, by all means, if you're qualified in the position, please come and teach me. And personally, the class I had that had the graduate teacher was really experienced in the field of conflict and especially in Africa, which I was passionate about. So I learned a lot from that. So I think the key is really making sure that these individuals are trained properly and are capable in doing their job. And if they are, then do your job, teach me. I don't see a problem with that. But if a problem was to arise down the line, I think by making sure there are proper channels and students feeling comfortable taking their concerns to administration, feeling comfortable taking their concerns to the deans, that's the way to do it. Personally, the Carter School has like teas with the deans that make students feel comfortable. They have a face to the dean. They talk with him on a regular basis. So having deans kind of bridge the gap between students and have those activities where students can come and talk to them will really make them feel comfortable in taking concerns about teachers to them. So I think that's the way to go.
Ransom?
Absolutely. So I personally don't have an issue with it. Actually, one of my favorite teachers, besides you, Professor Pilson, I love taking your class, was definitely Professor Bledsoe, who's teaching Gov 308 for me right now. But I know I don't speak for everybody. I know people at Mason probably share the concerns you're having, and maybe faculty share the concerns as well. Our whole point of student government is to be the voice of the student people, not just those within student government and not just those within connections, which is currently how it is. We actually are creating, I know some people say we shouldn't create positions, but we're creating a new position for faculty that really wants to work closer with the faculty senate and established a strong channel and working relationship alongside the senate faculty. We also want to make sure that this position reports to us how the faculty feels, because maybe you all have an issue with it. And we want to make sure that all of us are included in the situation, not just the students, because we are all together. We only prosper when we're all together. In terms of how the students feel, we would love to put out questionnaires that we would send to our RSOs through our outreach team. We would love to put out questionnaires through our newsletter to see how the students feel. And once there's a consensus from both sides, we take that consensus, we find a way to meet together with leaders, with us there obviously involved, and we figure out this issue. So no, I honestly don't think it's an issue, but I could definitely see for people watching this at home right now or seeing this later on, you might think it's an issue. And we're going to do more to make sure that you can report that to us, because we're going to go to you, not have you come to us. And we're going to work with our faculty and work with our students to fix whatever issues there needs to be done, because that's how we're going to get stuff done, is by building bridges and working together.
Okay. So closing statements now. I think, Natalia, you go first and then Ransom.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it switched? Isn't
Yeah, Kanos goes second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Cool. So am I good?
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Professor Pearlstein, and thank you to all who came tonight and to all who will watch this in the future. For the past 2 years, CJ and I have been fighting within student government against the status quo's wishes, and we've put in years of grueling work to help improve your Mason experience. From building 147 lights around campus to improve our safety, to holding our leaders accountable against the wishes of the status quo when they commit egregious actions, to protecting free speech, and even to adding 29 diners to our deals list, we have been the catalyst of change which the status quo cannot stand. I have visited the RSOs and boards who we know are not allowed to endorse any candidate, but we still talk to them and will fight for their concerns, as they were astonished and pleasantly surprised that people running for office actually cared about them. I feel your frustration and pain that arises due to the fact that student government and the status quo only works for themselves or their friends, not for all of Mason, not for you, and not for you. When I ask students what do they know about student government, they either say the lights or they say corruption. There is a mass frustration due to the current country club atmosphere we're up against. Trust me, we've been speaking to a lot of people. So next week, you have a choice. If you like how things are, if you like the status quo that is full of petty politics and only focuses on themselves and their top connections, don't vote for CJ and I. But if you want a student government that goes to you, a student government that works for all of Mason, no matter who you are, what your connections are, or what ideology you hold. If you want a student government that builds bridges with our RSOs, our admin, our workers, our community, our local elected officials, if you want the necessary positive change that must occur so that we all have a better place, a change that is not just talked about but implemented, then I ask you to join us, work with us, fight with us, and vote for us, because only together, unified as one Mason nation, can we finally finish our massive movement to change the status quo.
And Natalia.
Yes. It's a bit off script, but first off, I just want to start off by saying, yes, student government has been filled with a lot of drama, but I do not want to silence the voice of people who are doing amazing work, such as the Period program, the shuttle service was the Mason initiative, Rave Guardian. Having the conversations about Mason PD started years before this year about policing on campus. Student government has been doing a lot of work, and I don't want to silence the voices of people who have been doing those works. In conclusion, Veronica and I are the right advocates for the Mason community. We've had history of advocacy in the forms of initiatives like making Rave Guardian more accessible and promoting its features to students, as well as starting the conversation about Mason PD's issues on policing on campus, started with the Collegiate Black Men, for creating spaces like the Candlelight Vigil held to uplift Africa, implementing free menstrual product pilot program, and continuing the work of the Anti-Racism and Inclusive Excellence Task Force. We also have a vision and a plan with an amazing platform composed of specific initiatives related to the areas that affect students at Mason, and a clear, comprehensive platform in implementing these initiatives. We are ready to do the work. With our involvement in athletics, student government, various RSOs, SFB, Panhellenics, and more, we have the connections and relationships to help uplift the Mason community. With a cabinet that is going to be inclusive and representative of the Mason campus. You have 2 women of color right now running for student body president and vice president in a predominantly white school, where even running, people are like, you have to pick a man unless you're not going to win. We are here to take up the space needed to uplift the voices of people of color at Mason and minority groups who don't have a seat at the table. We are involved members, and we're ready to do the work and get ready and prepare Mason and really be in service to students. And yes, there is a lighting issue on campus, but garden lights might not fix this. We need to make sure that everything is implemented in making sure that the solar lights are empowered at night and making sure there's a clear path in the dark areas of the community. This is a construction issue and it really needs to be addressed. Oh, sorry.
It's time.
All right, Dominic, take it away.
All right, that's the end of the debate tonight, everybody. I just want to give a big thanks to Professor Pearlstein for moderating this for us. He did a terrific job, and it was great to have him help us out. And a big thanks to all the candidates as well. Remember, voting opens next Monday. It will be open all week until Friday. So be sure to get out and vote. Tell your friends, tell everybody to get out and vote. We have it should be a very competitive executive ticket election, so we're looking forward to it. Thank you so much for coming tonight, and thank you to the students that asked questions, and remember to get out and vote next week.